With V-Rising's launch on PS5 this week and having been out for about a month in its full 1.0 on PC, there are tons of people discovering the game for the first time or coming back after their romp in early access. The game does an amazing job of layering its mechanics in so that you're exposed to them over time as you grow your Empire of Night. But there are still some things that can be missed, so in this video today, I'm going to give you my ultimate beginner's guide to V-Rising. I'll be using both a PS5 controller and my keyboard to help outline how to get certain menus or whatever it is, depending on the platform you're using. And I typically like to upfront the knowledge of my videos, but for a guide, that's pretty tricky to do. So what I will say is, have fun with this game. Don't watch guides or min-max builds out there. Try to make your own. I realize the irony as you're watching a guide here, but this is geared more towards showing you how the game works versus forcing you into a specific mold. This is a survival game, so enjoy the slow and steady exploration of each tech jump with each material. If you get stuck, really try to struggle your way through before looking something up. I promise this game is so well crafted that the answer is there, somewhere. Switch your spells, weapons, whatever it is to get you through the hurdles the game will undoubtedly throw your way. But always make sure you watch Castle Tours on YouTube because holy crap, people are so creative with their castles and it's a huge time sink of the game that you can get lost in. Outside of that, you can quickly navigate to any part of the video that interests you the most using the chapters about the timeline in the description. So please just jump around and use the chapters as handy references. Let's get started here on my ultimate beginner's guide to V-Rising. Before we even jump into the actual game, let's talk about booting up a server. Go ahead and press play, and you can choose to host a server, play online, play PvP, play PvE, however you want to play. It's entirely up to you. Just know that if you are playing on a PvP server, those PvP rules will depend upon the server themselves. They might say, hey, it's entirely open world PvP. Or there's castle raiding only at certain times of day, on certain days of the week, whatever it is. And I'll show you that in a second here. But you just simply go ahead and select any server that you'd want from the list. But the real thing we want to do is a private game. So through this, we have the option of relaxed, normal, and brutal. If you're pretty good at action RPGs or you've maybe played a ton of Hades, play brutal. It's rewarding. It's not that much harder. The enemies do hit harder, but mainly every single boss has an additional mechanic. So it's a very fun way to play. And there are achievements that are unlocked only on brutal, so you might as well get them all done at once. Other than that, play on normal. Relaxed is, I think, personally probably too easy unless you just really don't want to deal with the fighting and you only want to build castles. But you have this button called Advanced Game Settings. What I want to talk about is all this is going to be whatever you want, right? Toggle this world should only be for solo play. It's a LAN server, max concurrent players, clan sizes, all these things. If you're brand new to the game, most of this won't really matter. What is really going to be important here is, teleport bound items. So when enabled, some items will prevent you from using waygates. I shut this off. I just don't like it. And also, bat-bound items. When enabled, some items will prevent you from transforming into a bat. I keep both of these things off because that way I can just have fun with the game. I don't have to worry about any kind of restrictions on my character, anything like that. And then you can change any kind of stuff from these menus. Multipliers saying like, hey, you know what? I want there to be more loot on my server. I want there to be more PvP. I want it to be enabled at these times. Like I was saying, you can have, okay, it's time restricted. Castle rating is only from these times on weekdays or these times on the weekends. Whatever it is, you can have a lot of customization here. So go through this, see if it makes sense for you. If you want, hey, you know what? I played a lot of early access, so I'm going to jump all the way up here to level 40. Boom, there we go. You're good to go. You can say, hey, let's go put me at level 40 and we're good. But this is a real big portion of the game, and I think it's pretty easy if you've just jumped in to not have this turned on. And if you're just kind of playing on your own, then this can be really tedious because this is kind of meant to put the brakes on you if you're playing on a server, and it allows you to really, it makes it so that the game won't let you just kind of go all over the place with all of your materials and kind of get far ahead from people. If it's teleport bound items is restricted, then you need to actually manually run them to your base, which is pretty tedious. The only other thing here is your soul shards amount. If you're playing with friends, maybe send this to plentiful. If you're playing, just on your own, it won't really matter. But basically there are these things at the end of the game where they're either only one of them can drop and the person who has it until someone takes it from them, or as many can drop as possible and doesn't matter. So this is kind of going to be up to you and how you're going to be playing your game. But once you've set this all up, you go ahead and press save and you start your game of V-Rising. Now that we've booted up the actual game though, let's talk about some quick keys, because quick keys are going to allow you to navigate the system a little bit better. And if you're playing with the controller, we'll go over that in a little second here, it's a little bit different to navigate. So we're going to go to options, and we're going to go to controls, and we're going to go to show bindings for the keyboard or mouse. And through here, we can see pretty much everything that's going on. WASD is our default move pattern, of course, but you have an auto run in this game, so make sure you set this to a button that makes sense for you. Mine's just set to mouse 4, so I can just click it on my mouse. A lot of the other stuff, though, is pretty self-explanatory. Weapon skills, ultimates, spell slots, jumping off cliffs. These are the things that the game is going to tell you about. But it does not tell you about modifiers for specific things. In the example of, you see this thing that says vampire power modifier key. So if I press shift and then 1, it will use whatever vampire power is set to the 1 ability. Conversely, it's the same thing for remote. So if I'm on keyboard or mouse, I can use left alt to set it to emote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is. And some other big things here too are interact and pick up. That's default is F, but I've also set it to have a button on my mouse. So it allows me to not have to always kind of, basically if I'm running around killing things, you can get kind of caught up with using WASD to move and then trying to push your finger over to F to pick stuff up. So if I'm in the middle of a fight and I need to just pick some stuff up real quick, I hold down my middle mouse button and it just goes ahead and picks it all up for me, or whatever button mouse 5 is for me. Some other things though are take all is Q. It'll just take all items from the container, take all items from the refinement output container, and E will do the same thing. You're either going to take or send things into a respective inventory slot, and I'll show that later. Sorting is also a nice one here. But another big one, if you played any of the early access, is the ability to hold down shift and it'll fill a room with wallpaper. And lastly here too, we have panels. So getting to your character menu is tab, or build menu is B, but just kind of knowing these things like J for your spell book or K for your blood menu. Conversely though, just simply pressing one of those buttons gets you to an ability to just jump to all of them quickly. So if I go ahead now and hold down Alt, you can see there is all of my emotes, but if I just press Alt 2, it just automatically uses an Alt. I auto-generated this character and he looks exotic. Same thing here with Control. If I press Control 1, well, it just doesn't do anything because I don't have any power there, right? Normally it would be wolf form. But this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can change this. Maybe you want Bloodmen to actually be your number 1. So even though it's number 7 on this list, you would go back into that key binding and just swap that out. Now let's go ahead and press this button. Not press this button, pick up my controller. And if I want to just do this on my PS5, it's just as simple as pressing square. Boom, it's all right there. L1 brings me to my social emotes. R1 brings me over back here. R1 again brings me to my just quick social abilities like, I need help. There you go. So it's pretty quick and self-explanatory. This might be like a pretty repetitive section. You're like, man, the game tells me most of these things. But being able to quickly navigate the inventory is going to be a pretty big benefit to you as the player. Before we skip ahead into one of my actual characters, I wanted to kind of show this stuff off to be as spoiler-free as possible. But we have your attributes, and attributes are going to be a very big part of the game. The big 4 that really matter, though, are gear level, physical power, max health, and spell power. If you're playing on PC, you can simply hover over these to pretty much tell you what they do. And spell power and physical power are going to be important because all of your spells are going to do percentages of these numbers. One spell might say something like it'll do 87% damage. It doesn't say specifically that it does 87% of your spell power, but that's what it's saying when it says those numbers, those percentages. Same thing with all of your physical attacking weapons. They'll say that they do maybe the base attack of a weapon will do 45, 45, and then 50% in the 3 attack combo. So it'll do 45% of physical power 10, which is 4.5, 4.5, and then 5.5, whatever it is, whatever percentages it has locked itself into. And then gear level is important because that is basically how the game scales its damage. So your gear level compared to the unit level of an enemy affects the damage you deal and receive against that enemy. Gear level has no effect versus other players. If I go ahead and press, well, maybe I can't jump into it. Yeah, I can't. I'll show it off in a different screen. But if you go into VBlood, it gives you a better breakdown of how that all works. And what's important too about your attributes is if you go to the attributes tab, you've got even more stuff to know about. The big thing here are resistances. Basically, this is a resistance against things like the sun, garlic, which you will be exposed to, fire, holy, and silver. Silver and garlic have stacks that are going to stack up against you. Having resistance against them is going to allow you to slow down or resist the damage that is done by, say, silver or the stacks that are applied from garlic. Reduces garlic application rate when exposed to garlic by 0%, while also increasing the recovery rate by X%. Additionally, reduces the max number of garlic applications to 100. So those two are pretty important. Enemies won't do damage with them, but you will have to deal with them as situational effects within the game world. Whereas fire and holy are outright damage numbers that you will have to deal with either as spells, as effects, whatever they are. So it's nice to know how you would mitigate them and what percentages can be mitigated through them. Then you have your other attributes. By and large, this won't mean much to you yet. It will begin to learn. You'll begin to learn more. And I think a majority of it is very self-explanatory, right? Attack speed, your spell and physical crit power. This is going to be based off of your physical and spell power, right? It's going to do 150% if it crits. And you kind of know how that works. With that crit chance right here, your movement speed, which is going to be pretty capital throughout the entire game. But another big one is leech. So this game has an ability called leech, wherein you will draw health from things if you hit them with a leech capability from a blood ability. And I'll talk about that when we talk to spells. But leech will drain health, and then when you kill the thing, it will give you even more health. So if I hover over this, primary attack leech, health recovered when dealing damage using primary weapon attacks. It's exactly what it is. Weapon skill leech is anytime I use a weapon skill, and spell leech is anytime I use a spell. So spells can actually recover health for you. And lastly, the two at the bottom here are resource harvest power, increases damage dealt to resources, meaning if I go to harvest a rock mineral, a tree, this increased number means I fell that thing faster, so I get the resources quicker. And resource yield is exactly what it sounds like. It's the amount that thing is giving you. So by default, everything gives you 100% unless it's set by a server to be a different way. But having this set higher through worker blood or maybe some sort of item allows you to get more resources from one thing than had you not had this higher. And if I were on a PS5, I'd go ahead and press this button. And you can't hover over anything. Anything up there in this game, or, well, that's different. But if I come over here to attributes, now I get the tool tips. So if you're on PS5 and you want to learn how to do all this stuff, just go ahead and jump into the attributes section of your character screen, and you can go ahead and take a look at all this action so you can get a good idea of what's going on. Next up, I want to talk about blood. Blood's going to be obviously a huge driving force for you in the game. And if we go over to our blood pool, we can see that I have a 100% blood pool right now. Your blood, not called clarity, your blood quality is going to determine the buffs that you get from your blood pool. And you have 10 total liters, and these liters will eventually degrade over time. Right now this is 3.7. It'll drop to 3.6 randomly. And you can do things such as using blood mend here at the bottom, which will heal your character, but it will cost you stuff from your blood pool or liters from your blood pool. Or if you die, you will lose portions of your blood pool. All these things are worth knowing. If you go and put yourself in your crypt, it will actually hold your blood pool where it is. So if you're going to say, hey, I got to go AFK for 10, 15, 20 minutes, go put yourself in your crypt and it will lock your blood pool where it is, and it'll actually heal you to full health. That's a nice little tip to know. But what you're going to see with your blood pool are 5 different tiers, and each one of those tiers has a range within it. So for example here, for tier 1, we have 10 to 20% chance to critical strike on weapon attack because we have rogue blood, 8 to 15% movement, so on, so forth, so on. And each one of these tiers is activated at a certain specific blood quality percentage. So tier 1 is, well, you guessed it, at 1%. But tier 2 happens at 30, tier 3 happens at 60, tier 4 happens at 90, and tier 5 only happens at a full 100%. And these intervals here happen within that range. So if I'm at 1%, then this is a 10% buff to my spell power. It doesn't vary on your percentage. It only varies on your tier. So if I have 29% blood quality, then I don't go up in the crit strike on weapon attacks. As soon as I jump to tier 2, I now get a 30%, or I'm sorry, a 13% chance to critical strike on weapon attacks. This would go to 15%, over here to 50% blood quality, and then 20% all the way up as you kind of scale through the blood quality here. Now, it's important to know, though, that at 20%, that's max. That's at 99% gets me to 20%. That's a lot of percentages, I'm saying. So 99% blood quality gets me to that full 20% bonus right here. But if I jump up into blood tier 5, you can see boost all effects by 25%. So this goes from being 20% crit strike to now 25%, because at 100 I get the 25% bonus. That's the time that trips off. It won't reflect it. As you can see, we're 100% blood quality, and it doesn't reflect anything here, right? It just shows it. If I hover over it, it just gives me the intervals. It doesn't show me exactly where it is. If I hover over it in my attributes, this is crit strike chance, right? Yeah. I don't have any bonuses to my crit strike chance, so that it shows me the benefit right here, where this would normally be 5%, now it's up to 32%. So you can see that the benefit is only reflected in your attributes, if there is any. Some of these are kind of a little bit more vague, like 15 to 30% increased veil cooldown recovery rate. I don't even think it shows. Yeah, it doesn't even show it down here. So a lot of this you're just going to have to, it won't be reflected in many tooltips within the game. It's just something you just kind of have to know by looking at the blood pool. But this is a very important part of the game, because you're probably wondering, okay, well, when does is this 10 to 20% happen at certain intervals? It's basically the scaling for the bonus is 1%, 30%, 50%, 99% within those ranges. And the actual threshold for these tiers is 1, 30%, 60%, 90%, 100%. That is how your blood pool works in V-Rising. Also, there's a bunch of different blood types. I'm just showing off Rogue here, but please explore around. I don't want to ruin it for you. There's a bunch of different ones with a bunch of different ways to play the game, and they will also change how you actually encounter or play with different things within the game. So enjoy that as much as you can. And if you are playing on a PS5, just to kind of have that continuity here, we would press pause, go R2, R2 to get over to our blood pool. And I can't hover over any of that, unfortunately, but that is your blood pool. That's where it shows you. You can't hover over it. You can only see it in the lower left corner on a PS5. You can't like hover over that in this screen. You have to press start. You have to go to blood pool to see all this bits of information. So if you're on a PS5, that's how you would quickly jump to that start and then R2 twice. If blood is a big part of the game, well, combat is probably the biggest part of the game. And we're going to go through your weapons and armor here in this section to show you kind of how everything operates. Just as a quick kind of briefer on our armor, that's going to go, of course, to these slots. You're going to see this little up arrow. You can go ahead and click it and then swap out any armor here. I'm sorry, any colors, or you can drag an item into this location, and it will always be present regardless of what you put in this location. Meaning, right now I'm naked, but, well, I've got no shirt on. But this will make it so that I always have Alucard's chest piece on, no matter what I put on. So I can always look like this if I want to. So you have those capabilities. And if we're on a PS5, we would go ahead and press down on our right thumbstick to go ahead and put that there if we wanted. We'd go press X up here. Oops. Move. It's tricky. There we go. You have to move it into that. You can't just press X and equip it. You have to, so again, just to kind of show you, since you're on a PS5, if I press X and I have this screen open, it'll pop it up there. And if I don't have that screen open, and I press X, it'll equip it. So having that on is what allows me to just put it in that menu. That sets it as a transmog is a good way to put it, right? If you're familiar with World of Warcraft, it just makes it as a permanent cosmetic. It's what the game will always see. And you can do this with any item. It doesn't need to be a cosmetic item. You can even have a previous tier of armor slot into this slot if you so wish. But kind of switching back to mouse because it's easier to talk and do this at the same time. There we go. You have everything equipped. You have your jewelry piece. You have your inventory item, whatever it is. And now you have your weapons. So I've gone ahead and divided the weapons up into 3.5 categories. The first category here is fast attack weapons. Weapons that are typically used with quote unquote one hand. They're a little bit quicker. Maybe they're dual wielded like in these two cases, but they are much faster weapons. So in that case, you have the iron axes or just axes. You have slashers, you have an iron sword, and you have a spear. And every single weapon will do a specific bonus. Attributes here, you see it says 17.3 physical power and plus 25% physical damage to creatures. So every single item, for the exception of any of the ranged or mid-ranged items, will do a percentage bonus towards a mineral or specific type of enemy. So in this case, the spear will do it to creatures, the sword will do it to vegetation, same thing with the slashers, and the axes will do it to wood. Same thing with the greatsword, which will do it to wood, and the reaper, which will do it to undead, and the mace, which will do it to minerals. So you'll use the mace to to break down rocks, copper ore, iron ore, sulfur, so on and so forth as you progress through the game. So it's key to always have these in your inventory, the ones that are going to be predominantly used to harvest materials for yourself. So make sure you have them on lock. Also, you'll see durability in the lower right corner. You can see that this says 1554 out of 1554. And if you hover over them, you'll be able to repair them if you need to. So if I were to hold down this, you can see it says repair, radium alloy and power core. I would have those in my inventory, press my middle mouse button to repair it. If I'm on a PS5, the square button repairs there. So just so that you have that bit of continuity. So with these weapons, you can see that they say that plus bonus to physical power, right? So right now my physical power is 10. Let's go ahead and put on the spear and equip it. It jumps up to 27.3. And now there's some other bits of information we get. So hovering over this, our primary attack, we see that perform a combo of melee attacks dealing 40, 40, and 50% physical damage. So all weapons attack in a 3 attack combo. So if I hold down left click or hold down R2 if you're on PS5, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's always the same. It's always going to be 3 attacks. That shows me that it's doing 40, 40, and 50% of my physical power as damage, meaning that's going to be, I don't know, not 13, 13 and a half or 13.68. I don't even know what it is. So whatever that number is for the 50% and then the 40 and 40%, that's the amount of damage it would do per swing per hit. And then you have 2 weapon abilities. If you are just starting off and you have bone, then that's just, there's no weapon abilities. As soon as you get to copper, you get Q, your first weapon ability, whatever it is per weapon. And then once you jump into iron, you'll get your E ability, again, whatever it is. And these will have associated cooldowns. This will say 8 seconds, this is 8 seconds. They have certain cast times because sometimes they need a little wind up, whatever the situation is. And all of these single attack, or these fast attack weapons, if you hover over, if you're on PC, you hover over this, it'll say a cast time. For some reason, Spear doesn't have a cast time. So this is 0.2. But the slashers have 0.15. So they are the fastest of the weapons with the least amount of damage per combo. Conversely, though, if we swap over to a two-handed weapon, this has a much slower cast time of 0.5, but it has 70, 70, and 80% physical damage. Now, the other 2 tiers, or other 2 weapon types, are the whip, which is a mid-range. I'll show you that. Right here is about the max damage, max range I can be to do damage to that thing. Or we can switch over to the true range weapons in the crossbow, the longbow, which is newly added, and the pistol, which is newly added, as well as the whip. They're all newly added with 1.0. But that allows me to equip it and shoot from this distance. If I can get that angle right. There we go. It's got a pretty good range. I think that's just short. Yeah, that'd be just short. So you can see that this allows you to be at a much greater range. Then you have your Q and E abilities, which allow you to kind of, oh, maybe this has an AoE on it, or whatever it is, or a snapshot to quickly shoot and split it off, whatever the capabilities are. Now, here's kind of a bit of a struggle. If you are playing on PS5, let's go ahead and press this button. You can see if I hover over these, it shows me those attributes of physical damage and all these things. Let's go ahead and equip the Iron Greatsword. Well, that's it. There's no way for me to show you what the Iron Greatsword's abilities are on the right like I can on PC. I can just simply hover over them. Even if I press start, there's no way to kind of show this off. I can press change tab, I can do that. So if you are playing on PS5 and you figured out a way to find this, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. But I have been racking my brain trying to figure out how I can show off those individual weapons. Live here today on this video, we just discovered how to show off the individual abilities of your weapon. Let's show it off. So you're gonna go ahead and press the square button, hold it down, and then you see that little icon right there for the icon there for the right button on your control pad. You press it, and there you go. There's all your abilities. I swear to God, I did not know how to do that until I started doing this video. So now you can see, for example, with the greatsword, I've got my primary attack, it's cast time, my great cleaver, and my death from above abilities. It shows you too what they are. This is a dash, this is a travel ability, and every single item will have a different set of 2 abilities that will maybe be a ranged attack, a dash, whatever it is. And I really want to encourage you to not play the game so one-dimensionally. Like, don't come up to this thing and just go, okay, I'm attacking. I'm going to use my weapons abilities now, okay, right? Let's do this one. Okay, I did that one. Now let's go do this over here. Oh, that's a spell. That's a spell. That's a spell. That's a spell. That's a spell too. Oh God, this is like the worst video you could ever want to watch on how to play the game. Do that. Like, you can use your abilities like that, but I encourage you to use your abilities as ways to close distance. Hey, this is over here. Nope, this is over here. There we go. Let's actually use an alt on it. Let's go press L1 like that. Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit of range on it. Let's press L2 and R1. Now I can jump over that thing and now do my damage. So this allows you to use your weapons in a bit of a more dynamic way. Yeah, sure, you might be using a melee weapon, but it doesn't mean you have to stay at this melee range the entire time. You can use your abilities to give yourself some range, to give yourself some abilities to sit there and go, okay, well, I've got the sword on now. Yeah, I'm over here, but I gotta some distance. Man, I gotta go back to that creature. Let's go ahead and do this. Well, now that thing is up in the air. I can do whatever it is, or we can do this and get some good AoE damage. Use your weapon abilities to give you some mobility or to give you some capabilities across the battlefield that you maybe wouldn't have. Even if there are some set like lunge capability, like the axes. The axes have a frenzy, which will dash forward. Well, you've got your dash on spacebar or whatever it is on PS5, but you can still use your weapon abilities to help close distance. So you can see the distance from here to here. If I press Q, it closed it and we were able to hit that thing. We could have actually even probably launched a little bit further back and still been able to be in range here with this frenzy ability. See, it's got a pretty good range on it. Even further, you know, this is a projectile. You can go ahead and launch that and have some good fun with it. So use your weapon abilities and use your weapons in more ways than what they simply are. Yeah, I said that these are your range and mid-range capabilities, or mid-range and mid-range weapons, but you can still pull some range out of your melee weapons. The game is meant to be dynamic and to force you to use different weapons to help you with stuff. Like this spear, that is going to help you throw a spear that deals physical damage and pulls the enemy towards you. There's different variations of the spear depending on whatever you do as you progress through the game that allows you to do different stuff with this projectile harpoon. Do stuff like that. You have got so many different ways. So please try to approach your weapons in a very fun manner. Use them as dynamic abilities to move around so you're not just kind of stuck in one spot. Like, okay, I'm shooting with my pistols, and then I'm going to use this ability to close distance and then jump back over here and shoot more. Like, you've got so many fun ways to move around this game, so take advantage of them with your weapons. The other side of combat is magic, and you have 6 magic schools to choose from. Part of my really, I don't know, optimism is hoping that these empty tabs over here are expansions to the magic schools, but we'll find out. That's neither here nor there. Blood magic is blood magic, and this allows you to leech. So leech the life force from your enemies for 5 seconds. Physical attacks restore 10% of damage dealt against leeched enemies, and heal self for 3% of your max health when a target affected by leech perishes. This is what I was talking about earlier as far as what leech does. And how this game works is you've got tier 1, these 3 right here, tier 2, these 3 right here, and tier 3 spell slots. You'll unlock these spell slots as you go through the V-Blood meters. So if take, for example, Keely the Frost Archer, she's going to give us a tier 1 Frost spell point. We go to Spellbook, we go to Frost, and that's any one of these abilities. So that I can invest that point and pick and choose how I want to progress through these individual branches. It's just a matter of getting the respective tier slot to unlock them. But let's go through these 6 schools. So Chaos Magic gives us Ignite, which will deal 50% of magic damage over 5 seconds, and triggers an explosion that deals 50% of magic damage when you kill something that has Ignite on them. And all these spell schools will hinge upon these passive innates that are a part of every single one of them. Unholy Magic has Condemn, which allows you to decrease damage dealt to a target by 15%, but also will summon an Unholy Warrior if you kill something that is marked with Condemn. So basically, you mark them with one of these abilities or something that puts Condemn on them, and then if you kill them within 5 seconds, then they summon up a little skeleton warrior. And Illusion Magic is very interesting. So you get Weaken, which will, rather than increase the damage done, you now are going to reduce their damage by 15%, and you have a 33% chance to gain Phantasm whenever a weakened target perishes. Phantasm is fun too, because this is a kind of a layered set of intrinsics. So Phantasm reduces your spell cooldown by 1% and grants a 2% chance to reset the cooldown on cast, meaning that if you are casting spells, it'll randomly say free cast, in which case you can just simply cast that spell again because your Phantasm triggered. But this can stack up to 10 times. So this 2% can become 20%, and this cooldown can become 10% after it stacks all the way up. Frost Magic has Chill, which will reduce things' movement speed by 15%, but if you stack up Chill on something, then they become frozen. So deal 25% magic damage, inflicts Chill, and staggers the target for 1 second if the target is immune to freeze, but freeze your enemies solid, making them unable to move or act. So Frost Magic is unique in that all these other ones will give you something to kind of help reduce damage or help heal you. Frost Magic doesn't have those capabilities. Frost Magic actually just outright shuts something down for you, which can be pretty cool when you're dealing with tons of enemies. Then lastly, Storm Magic here will electrify your enemy for 5 seconds, causing physical damage dealt to them to trigger a shock, dealing 10% magic damage. And then it triggers a chain lightning effect, traveling towards the nearest enemy, dealing 50% magic damage, inflicting static and bouncing up to 2 times when a target affected by static perishes. So you can see that each one of these spell schools has these cool intrinsics. And I encourage you to not stick with the same spells throughout the game. When I started the game off, I used Corrupted Skull and I used Blood Rage, and I used them for the majority of the game. And I was like, you know what, the game was starting to get trivial for me. I was starting to really kick ass with everything I would attack. So I swapped this off to like Chaos Surge or Power Surge, and I swapped off this to, I did Spectral Wolf. There's a lot of different things that you can do in these spells, and I strongly encourage you to swap them off. Try out different intrinsics, and also get different jewels. That's a big part of this game, are jewels. Jewels are going to add spell modifications to a spell. And I'm going to show you one spell here, Void. This spell modification, Void in and of itself is fine. But once you get the spell mod, it has an ability to spawn 3 exploding fragments, dealing 21% damage and inflicting Ignite. So these things can really change how a spell operates within the game. You might have hated a spell when it first started, but now that you have a jewel that gives you these abilities, that spell is now way cooler. I didn't even touch specifically Frost Nova until I got the jewel I've got now, which allows me to do this. And I can now recast it again and do that. So I can stack up Chill, then freeze people with that smaller cone of Frost Nova. Or take, for example, too, I have Shadow Bolt, which inflicts Vampiric Curse, which deals 159% damage and leeches 20% health. So this gives me a ton of healing from this range capability right here. So you can have a lot of fun with these, and you can morph these throughout your playthrough and really enjoy them. One thing to note too is that spells are typically broken up into groups. So these little icons around them, that denotes that it is a ultimate, meaning it goes into this location here. So I'll choose, I don't know, I kind of don't want to spoil it, but we'll use this one. I think this is one that's like used in all the trailers, which is Chaos Barrage. It's one of my favorite ones. So I press T, and it launches a bunch of final flashes if you're Vegeta. But basically, you've got these 2 ultimates. Every single school's got one. Every school's got 1 dash. That's denoted by these kind of cool little Hermes feathers here and the little guy dashing. And then you have a bunch of different types of spells. So This icon that looks kind of like this, every single one, typically every single one has one. They'll either have this looking character, which is a counter, or they'll have some sort of shield. So these are your defensive spells, and I'll show you the difference between the two real quickly. If I have this up, it says counter. So anything that hits me in that time will trigger whatever the effect of the spell is. If I have this one, this puts a shield in front of me and I can target. This shield is directional, so I have to face the shield of wherever the damage is coming from. And that will trigger whatever effects it says. So, jumping back to our spell book, take Frost for example. Frost has a shield, but it also has a counter. So, this is a way to kind of morph around the game. You'll have counters, you'll have shields, you'll have area effect spells, you'll have line damage projectiles, or just simply straight up projectiles. You'll have things that summon and explode. You'll have spells that give you or your buddies shields. You'll just have straight up summons. Like this will just straight up summon that guy, and he just straight up helps me out. You have a bunch of different types of spells, and I really encourage you to try them out. Use a bunch of different kinds. There's these ones like Power Surge or Blood Rage, which are just straight up quick buffs. They're like, hey, it's for 4 seconds and you're going to do a crap ton of damage. Or you can have really cool displacing ones. This one I don't think will work on a dummy, but that would displace us. It would swap our locations, which is really cool. So these spells are very diverse and very different, and I encourage you to try out new ones as you play through the game, especially if you hit bosses that you're really struggling to kill. Swap your spell combinations out. Hey, it's a melee boss and that boss is just absolutely dunking on me. Then maybe you need to start using a counter, or they've got a one specific attack that every time they use it, I cannot get away and it always rips right through me. Well, then maybe you need to stop using all of your range spells and start using a ward or a shield ability to absorb the directional damage of the boss. Be dynamic with your spells. Your spells can be the same from start to finish if you watched a build guide, but what the fuck's the point of that? You paid money for a game, play exactly how you want. And spells, weapons, and armor are a big part of that combination. One last thing on spells, and this really has to do more with the veils or your dash capabilities, is you'll see that this says dash towards input direction and elude nearby enemies for 2.2 seconds. This means that you're pretty much invulnerable for 2.2 seconds. If I press this button, they're going to focus on that illusion, and I'm kind of like somewhat invisible in that time, right? Let's try it again. Like they're not going to attack me. So it gives you a little bit of time away, and you'll see jewels that'll increase that elude duration. They're talking about that 2.2. So for example here, my jewel says increase elude duration by 19%. It increases that 2.2 by 19%. And if you're on a PS5, just to kind of show it's circle. You know, that's how you would do all this. And one thing I didn't really illustrate is on PS5, if you're using your spells, L1, really make sure it's really kind of tedious to target. So just be patient as you learn how this whole process goes, because it's going to be the spells are really the hardest thing I think to use on PS5. R1. And the nice thing though is using these, you have any of these AoE capabilities, you have the ability to just hold it down and just go, okay, I want it right here. You can move around and have that set, versus on a PC I really can't do that. I can do that, I can do that. Just keep in mind, if you're using a PS5 and you have those AoE spells that have that recast, holding R1, moving it over and doing this, your recast, you have to hold R1 and do it again. It will default to just going directly under you otherwise, which can be very nice for some spells that will do heals, or they'll give you any kind of damage, shields, anything like that. You can just simply tap the button, which is really nice. On a PC, you can't. You have to make sure your cursor's over you. That's got to be like facing you. But on a PC, if I held down C, see, even if I hold it down, it still goes to cast the spell very quickly. So you do have an advantage there with your PlayStation. Putting this all together, we can have a boss fight, even though I'm about to run out of blood. But hey, that's neither here nor there. If you're on PS5, you're going to have to approach this however you'd like to approach it, because you have a controller. I'm going to be using my keyboard and mouse. So with a boss fight, what I really want you to think about are a couple things. A, what time of day is it? So I can see in the upper right-hand corner where it's like midnight, right? It's midnight plus, so it's almost 1 a.m. I'm pretty safe to do this fight. But another thing too is look at your surroundings. What is going to be in the way, or what's going to be advantageous to this boss fight? I've got some wolves over there. These guys are back there. I got to be careful. So once we start these fights, try to have fun with just kind of bouncing left and right. You can really kind of try to bait out some of these shots. I don't know why I said kind of. You can actually bait out the shots. I'm taking them to show points here. So if I stay here, it's always going to hit me. But if I move in one set direction, you'll see it gives me capabilities to kind of dodge away from her shots. Sometimes I track. You can see she stopped tracking me, and that gives me the ability to kind of move away from it. And if you listen to the vocal cues of the boss, they'll usually say something, right? Like, enough is enough, and then they'll do an ability. And you just kind of listen for those vocal cues to give you the ability to get away from maybe big damning shots or big, huge things that really could hurt you, and use your dodge to the best of your capability. What I would encourage you to do is not get lost in the sauce of using your veil. Okay, she said freeze, then she's going to do this AoE attack. Don't get lost in the sauce of always trying to use the veil to close the distance. Always want to think of that as, do I have... Okay, right here. Okay, now it's a good time to use my veil to get out of that shot. I think it's too often that people will think to use their dash, their veil, to close the distance with the boss. Just take your time, get distance from them, see what's going to happen. Okay, that's going to happen over here. Let's get in the way of this. And then rather than doing that to jump into things, okay, well now they're hidden and I really can't see them. Maybe she would, to do that freeze capability, that would have really ruined me right there, right? Because unless I'm really mindful about getting out of the way, I can really hurt myself. At 50%, bosses will usually trigger a phase 2, or they will drop health orbs. So she has another ability. I don't know why she's not using it. But 50% is when you want to start getting some distance from a boss. Be ready for what's going to come your way, because it's going to be a whole new set of mechanics on top of their existing ones. The game layers this very well. This is one of the first bosses you're going to deal with, and she doesn't have a bunch of crazy mechanics. It's just these two over and over, plus her little invisibility. But if you're on Brutal, she does have more mechanics. So just knowing how to approach bosses is going to be very helpful for you. And you can also, if you're dealing with bosses, craft these right here, Vermin Solves. It's a solve that recovers 35% of your max health over 15 seconds. But you have to be sure that you use them and stay out of damage for a little bit. It needs to have time to activate. So you want to be able to just basically, okay, she's over there. Maybe I go over here. And I blood mend. Uh-oh, I didn't think about this, and there's this guy over here who's going to stop me. So you just have to be really mindful of all your surroundings when you jump into these boss fights, because even if you she could kill me. She could very well kill me if I really kind of don't pay attention, get cocky, and let her just kind of slap into me. She's doing quite a bit of damage, right? And I'm double her levels, almost triple. So enemies are always lethal in this game. No matter how low they are, almost died right there, how low they are, how high you are, whatever it is. So just have fun with it, but also at the same time, be mindful of your surroundings. See, we're almost time to have the sun up, but then have the fun of extracting that blood, getting your progression, and locking in. You're going to find that as you progress through the V-Blood meter, these bosses are going to layer mechanics in. The game does a very good job of pacing this process for you, so you're not just kind of jammed up with the hardest boss in the world right out the gate. The game will get progressively harder and harder and harder until you get to the very top, which will be, every boss is an experience. There's going to be lots of mechanics, lots of movement. So just be mindful of that. And the biggest tip for fighting bosses is always get distance. Move away from them until you learn a little bit of their attack patterns and their mechanics so you can approach them the best way possible. Here's a quick tip for you. Every time you find anything like this in water, you want to fish for it. You'll find that you'll get the fishing rod once you kill a specific boss in the game, and you might think to yourself, I don't want to do fishing, that's dumb. Fishing is actually a pretty huge part of this game, and it's something that's very easy to slack off on in the beginning, but you should definitely take advantage of it. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and the game will just go ahead and do its thing. And if you're like, oh, there we go, we fished it out. Okay, in this case, we just simply got a fish. That's no big deal. But it's actually very beneficial. Fish are crucial to the servant and the prison system of this game. In addition to that, you can find rare items that you can only find through fishing. You can find resources, but most importantly, you can find recipe books. There are 3 tiers of research. You can find them in every single location. So this allows you to hard tech up in the game very easily without having to deal with spending tons of time finding the resources to tech up. So make sure you are fishing all the time in this game. If you're on a PS5, you would just simply do all these things that you would normally. So I'd press, R2 to fish, and it shows you the direction to do it. So you'd go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to fish in that over that direction, wherever that hell that is, what it's called. There's a little blip over there, I think. Let's get over to one and I'll show you. Oh, no, that's not. That's just condensation. What a great video this is. But again, you would just use R2, face the direction of where those little things are, let it go through. Then you'd press R2 again to bring it out from the water whenever you get that little bloop. Here's another quick tip. Whenever you see anything undead, naturally you can't drink its blood. But also anything that does leech does not help. It will not give you any kind of health for anything that says undead. Skeletons or otherwise, they will not help you out. So if you go to use your blood abilities on them, it's not going to give you any life. So just keep those things in mind when you are fighting undead bosses, undead enemies, because they will be a big part of this game. So having covered a lot of the big things in the game, there's one thing that you probably don't do in many RPGs. Survival or otherwise, and it's consumables. I mean, I couldn't tell you, unless it's like Diablo, right, where the game is based off of using health potions. I almost never use potions. But the game of V Rising requires you to use potions for specific portions of it. Maybe a boss is in a specific area, you need a certain type of consumable. But moreover, they can really be the thing that tips you over the edge when you are encountering certain portions or challenges within the game. So we'll start over here with crafting the very beginning. You have that vermin solve we talked about. Remember, this is a solve that recovers 35% of your max health over 15 seconds. The healing effect is limited when in combat and breaks upon taking damage. Your max health is whatever health you have above your head that does not have a black bar. So, I'm sorry, that has a black bar. So as far as that, so right now my max health is 167. If I were to take damage and that black bar starts to get reduced, wherever that black bar ends, that is my new max health until I use Blood Mend to heal myself up or go rest in my crypt. So keep those things in mind because that's how your healing really works in the game. But there are tons of other consumables. Even the rats, you can consume those to get some health. And even stuff like this, Silver Resistance Brew, a brew that increases silver resistance by 15 for 60 minutes. You'll find that these will be very beneficial. There's 2 things though. They will last for an hour, almost all of them do, and effect persists through death. And I think that's always one of the big things that prevents us from using consumables is, oh man, I just died and lost that consumable. That really sucked. I crafted a whole bunch of them. Well, as you kind of jump into the game, you'll have even more to dive into, but something as simple as Minor Sun Resistance Brew is a huge benefit to the game. It allows you to walk around during the sun without having to deal about things as fast as you normally would. Or the Brew of Ferocity, which is another really early one that you'll get access to, which just simply increases your physical power by 3, but that's a nice little way to tip yourself over the edge. All these initial ones you'll all get in Act 1, and they're going to be huge changes to the game, depending on what you're dealing with. Maybe you're dealing with a boss that has a lot of fire resistance or a lot of fire damage coming your way. You can use this to mitigate that fire damage. So really use your consumables. You will sleep on them in the beginning. I did too. Everyone does. Everyone doesn't really use them. But then you'll get to a point in Act 2 where you have to use them or you cannot defeat a boss. That is using this one right here. But you'll experience harder and harder bosses that require more and more mechanics that have specific elements or whatever they are, and this will require you to dip into these consumables. Just do not sleep on them. Make sure you are tapping into them. Since we talked about consumables, there's another real big portion of consumables, and that is in gardening. Gardening doesn't seem like a very fun thing, just like fishing doesn't seem like a very fun thing, right? But gardening is pretty crucial. And you can have a cool little, like, very scenic garden like this, or you can take a super kind of production route and just say, hey, you know what? I just need a lot of cotton. So here's all my cotton, and I can go ahead and pop into my, where are my slashers? Or you know what? Swords will work, right? Yeah, it's vegetation. So I can just go ahead and use my swords and cool, got all my cotton, got all my sacred grapes. You know, this allows me to just quickly harvest these resources that I need and move on. I don't need to have these really cool, pretty walkways. I have a greenhouse at the top of this this building here because I grew up with greenhouses and orchids, so whatever. But still, gardening is really important because you'll see with all those consumables, they will require portions of gardening to make them go through, right? So we take a look at this. Okay, this has got oil and fire blossom. This has got morning lily and blood rose. This has got hell's clarion and fishbone. So having those things ready and handy allows you to not have to go out and go, okay, I gotta go harvest those and get them done with. Having a garden set up, if it's pretty, cool. If it's not, if it's just super effective, then even better. So try to approach this in a way that makes sense for you and how you're playing, but it's definitely something you don't want to sleep on because you're going to find yourself needing specific materials for a specific boss during a blood moon. You can't take advantage of it and you're scrambling to find them and you miss the blood moon because you just didn't have those materials. This helps you to circumvent that by doing the proper chores you need to so that you always have the materials for the stuff you need. Building also is a huge part of this game, but it's one that you're gonna maybe experiment or do differently depending upon what server you're on or how you like to approach it. For me, building is something that I didn't really initially fall into, but it's something that I grew into in the game and now I absolutely love. I spend way too much time designing my castles and having fun with them. And I think that there's no real cool beginner's guide to this. It's just a matter of like, you have to explore this however you explore this. And you either have to fall in love with it or you don't and you build a big old box and that's fine. Don't worry about it. You don't need to make these sprawling, crazy nighttime mausoleums or whatever the hell I've got going on over here. But at the same time, enjoy it. Have fun with it. Make something that you enjoy, that you want to spend time in. And you'll find that your tech will be something that you'll kind of rush through because I just want to get more decorations and stuff like that. All the DLC in the game is purely cosmetic, so if you download any of the DLC, it just adds more. Like all these statues and statues of Alucard and my armor here and all my wallpaper, that's all the Castlevania DLC. But outside of that, building, I also want you to know that you should probably be making multiple refinement and crafting resources. Take this sawmill, for example. I've had 2 sawmills since I started the game. It just allows you to take a stack of, I don't think I have any, taking a stack of wood, splitting it in half, and putting one in here and one in the other, and having them produce wood twice as fast for you. Also make sure you're producing them within a confined room. Yeah, sure, on matching floor, but you won't have matching floors for all the respective rooms. You'll grow into that, but it's making sure they're in a confined castle wall because that reduces the time more than anything. Reducing the cost is always going to be great, but the time is the biggest thing here. And if you're not playing on a persistent server, then having that be that bonus active allows you to get these resources done while you're playing. If you're on a persistent server, you can slap the resources in and then log off and it'll do it all for you, which is really nice. But as you kind of go through this whole process and you unlock more floors, you'll find that you're naturally going to build the rooms that make sense. Like here's my tailor. And I come up here and here's my jewel crafter. You'll naturally progress through these ways of playing the game because the game almost wants you to do it. So if you don't want to do the building, just make sure you're making just a bunch of squares that you can make for these rooms and house all the necessary items here. Like, okay, here's my library. So you don't necessarily need to make this cool castle, but you should probably have some fun making the individual rooms to help the efficiency of your min-maxing if you are trying to make specific rooms for specific use cases to reduce the amount of resources you need and speed up the amount of time it takes to do everything. As you progress through the game, you're going to get access to servants, and servants are a huge boon. At the beginning, they might seem completely inconsequential, but they will start to have a huge effect on the passive resource generation in your game. And if you're playing on a PvP server, they're actual defenders of your castle. So I'm going to go ahead and click this button right here. Oh, he's off on a mission. Of course, all of them are off on missions. What a great time to do this. But either way, you can see that your expertise exists on a servant. Your expertise is based off of the blood quality of the captured servant that you found. You put them into this servant crypt, and they will convert and become your permanent servant, in which case you can then send them on missions once you progress to that point in the game. But this expertise amount helps increase the number of things. As you can see here, it says increases max health from gear level, damage from gear level, hunt proficiency by 36, and increases loot from successful hunts by half of what your expertise is. So 36 divided by 2 is 18. So this is a great way to increase your capabilities for that character. I don't think I have a 40 on here. I'm not cool enough to get a 40. Yeah, I mean, this guy's even 25, but still 29 right there. And again, this is going to be dependent upon your build quality. So if I were to take this Archer, which has 100%, she would have a higher chance of being, I think 44% is the max. So she would have a higher chance of being 44. Even at 100%, it's no guarantee. Every time you convert a servant, there is a range that they can be depending upon what their starting blood value is. So at 100%, that expertise range is 37 to 44%. So the max you can be is 44, the lowest is 37. But even someone who's 99% has a chance to be 44%. It's just kind of a wild system. So you're going to always be looking for these servants that have this little red glow. That tells you they're over 90%. Like these 4 right here, or these 3 right here. She doesn't have it. So by doing this, it allows you to have strong characters in your base. It allows you to have really good people that are going to go out on missions. But eventually you'll progress to the point that you can take these people you've subdued around the world and put them into prison cells. And you can then extract their blood to make potions for yourself. These blood potions will set your blood to whatever it is. So I have, for example, a 99% rogue, a 96% warrior, a 96% worker, an 85% brute, all sorts of things. So anytime I need a quick quaff of blood, I can use this and it sets my blood to that. And the point of me going over it in this video is this is why you need to worry about fishing early in the game. So by the time you get to the point that you're doing this, you're not like, oh man, I don't have the fish to help out with their health and misery. Because when you take blood, you see here it says taps blood and does 30 to 60% health damage and then increases misery by 10 to 20%, which increases the amount of damage they take whenever you harvest blood from them. Fish mitigate that. Reduces recovers health and reduces the misery that they've got, all the way up to like stuff like this. So you can see that fish are a constant companion in this game. You're going to be using them no matter what. And eventually you'll get to cool things like Blood Merlot and stuff like that, which will allow you to do different things. But constantly feeding, constantly harvesting blood is a big portion of this game. And it's something that I didn't do in the beginning. And I was like, oh, cool, I got a 100% blood person. I'm going to suck their blood and have 100% blood for, I don't know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, however long it lasts. But I didn't realize how valuable it would have been just to subdue that person, make them a servant, and have that person helping me out with missions for the long term of the game. Choosing a location for your castle is going to be tricky. Now, I have a whole video on this with a bunch of suggested locations of where to place your castle, but really it's going to come down to wherever the hell you want. Don't worry about any kind of restrictions. If you're not playing on a PvP server, then just have fun with this. If you are playing with friends, again, have fun with this. There are certain locations, like this one over here, that shows 2 locations that are shared. This way, if you're playing with someone or a spouse or a clanmate, you guys have a shared location where you have a little bridge that kind of conjoins the 2. There's other ones across the map here too that are like that. Like this one up here has the same situation, or these over here. So have fun with this. Just simply choose one. If you want to really kind of min-max it or choose something that makes maybe a little more sense, try and find something that has a single entryway into the lot. But you can see this is my main castle. It's got 1 entryway. It's nice. Well, not my main castle, my first castle. But these are my 2 friends. Theirs have 2 entryways into it. Doesn't make their castles any better or worse than mine. It just comes from kind of being more defensive in a PvP scenario. Or I come over here to my main brand new castle. It has 1 ground level and then 2 entryways in. So that isn't necessarily an optimal castle, but it's huge and awesome and fun. So don't get too hung up on this, but I will give you a little bit of advice. Since you start down here in Farbane Woods, I would recommend you start your castle somewhere up here in Dunley Farmlands. It tends to be a little bit better because it's centrally located to the rest of the game. There's nothing wrong with starting all the way down here, but if you're playing on a server that doesn't allow for teleportation, it's a much longer walk going down to this location versus anywhere else on the map, or especially Dunley Farmlands, which is centrally located. And there's a lot of really good plots, like this one right here is huge. This one over here is really good. Mine's is great. This one has a waterfall on the outside of it. So there's plenty of good plots. Go ahead and just choose the ones that make the most sense for you. Organization is a very big part of V-Rising because you're going to have tons of items in the game. Now, unlike many survival games, V-Rising has specialized storage. So if I go ahead and take a look at my character and I hover over something that says knowledge, this says gem, this says material. So those will go to a respective storage bin once you unlock them in the game. And there's a quick way to do this. So I'm going to show that off here today. And we talked about this as well in the quick key portion of this video, was using Q and E. So we come up to this gem storage and I can go ahead and press E, and it already has these things highlighted, right? But E just jams them in there already for me. And if I'm on my PS5, we can go ahead and press L1 to jump over to this section. And I can go ahead and press either press down on L3 or down on R3 to quick send it on over. That allows me to just press these things back and forth to get it all done quickly. And you can, of course, press X and just jump back and forth between these screens and move them all over. And this is really going to save you a ton of time. I don't think we have anything on me in here. Nope, we don't. But as we kind of come through this, I can basically jump to my base, go to locations that have items that I want to get offload, over to this, just press E and get ready to go to the next thing. You'll probably have something like this, a large chest to begin with. Put this out of the sun. In which case you can create, if I split this stack and put this in here, it goes, hey, we can go ahead and press E and immediately put this in here because you have shown us that there is an item in this location. Cool, E, it's now over there. So you can use this even if you don't have specialized storage. You can have things in a specific storage until you get specialized storage and still use Q and E to help you quickly navigate and organize. One of the last notes I want to really talk about here is your research desk. You're going to unlock this very quickly in the game, probably after the first boss. And this is how you're going to get different consumables, magic, weapons, armor, structures, all sorts of things unlocked for you. And this will give you 2 additional tiers as you go on throughout the game. There's a research desk, and there's a study, then there's an anathenium or whatever the hell it's called. This is a big portion of your progression, and it's why I was talking about fishing being so important, because you can just straight up loot these books, stuff like that. Oh, okay, these things are for your study or wherever. I think I have I think one of these is exclusively for research desk. I don't even know. I remember when I had a whole entire topic on organization. I'm not organized. Well, neither here nor there. Either way, you can see that you'll progress through these entire things, and that's how you'll tech up in this game. But you can also get this tech by go ahead and going through your V-Blood. Now you'll have tech on here that is exclusive to these bosses. So for example, material, gem, and storage, or copper, torch, and brazier, it's only here from Errol the Stonebreaker. You cannot get it from this research desk. But the other way to unlock this outside of the explicit items is having enough of that tier's resource to randomly discover one of the items in this location. This is pretty self-explanatory, but I felt like if I didn't bring this up in a beginner's guide, it wouldn't be that comprehensive of a guide. And there are also certain technologies that you'll unlock, blueprints that you'll unlock by simply completing the quests in the upper left-hand corner. In the beginning of the game, they will be very rudimentary and it'll be very quick, but eventually you hit a progression point where they will slow down. It will not be so linear. You'll have one that says, okay, kill something. Okay, get your gear level to 30. Get to this, to that, to this, to this. And then you'll go long spans of time before you unlock a blueprint from this quest track. So keep these things in mind, as they will be the thing that kind of pushes you through the game. So at that, it brings our video here to a close. And hopefully this gives you a better idea of how to approach certain things within V-Rising. The game is a sandbox, it's a survival, play exactly how you want. But there's a lot of little things that I think can get away from you, or things that you probably ignored by playing because you're like, when am I ever going to need to garden? When am I ever going to need to fish? All these things do stack up because you will eventually need those things. So whether it is using specific items, using specific spells, building out your castle in a way that really kind of resonates with you and how you want to play. Whatever it is, there's always a different thing to do in V-Rising. And I always find myself really getting lost in this process because, as you can see, look how much time I've been spending on my castle. This isn't time I've spent killing Dracula, who's the main boss at the very top. It's time I've spent enjoying the game. So it doesn't always need to be coming down to pushing through the V-Blood meter as fast as you can, trying to beat your friends to beating the game. Play this game how you want. It is a sandbox, and there's tons of fun ways to approach it and do things with it that aren't just relegated simply to pushing your way through as fast as you can. If enjoy yourself, enjoy every little bit of it. And if you are watching and you've been playing for all this time and you have a bunch of really cool tips, let it be known in the comment section below. Say, hey, you know what? One thing that really helped me out was making sure that I stockpiled this resource, or making sure that when I was going through the game, I always use these items, whatever it is, to help people jump into this game for the first time. I don't want you to play and go, I'm just frustrated because I can't do this thing properly, or whatever it is. I want people to feel that there are tons of ways to approach stuff in this game, which they are, and I want you to feel like you're going to have a good time, because you fucking will. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.